Welcome to Ollie Unplugged. This episode's brought to you by 3,000 log lines someone just added because it might be helpful someday. Spoiler alert, it won't be, but it will be expensive. So, Soph, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well, Bill. Very excited to wrap up this three-part series. It flew by. We were having so much fun, but we're finally on the third episode. And of course, we have back again the fabulous Paige Cruz, or shall we say, OTel Overlord S.
Hello. We're recording this on a Friday, so it is a very happy Friday. Excited for the weekend. Can't believe we're in summertime.
We are going to kick it off with our hot takes, followed by our mailbag. But let's start with the hot takes first. I want to hear your hot takes on logs.
My hot take on logs is logging everything just in case. It's how you end up with a bonfire of useless telemetry. Like we've been talking about OTel, people really have to think about and have some intent around what they log. It's no longer, I'm just looking at this, nobody else looks at this log. They're all being looked at all the time. So I think, log with intent. That's my hot take today.
I like that. Be intentional. Paige, I feel like you're going to have definitely a logging hot take. I want to hear it.
Crackling take on logs. So my hot take on logs is that a lot of orgs today have what's called like a logging pipeline. And there are actually transformations, there's processing rules, maybe there's dropping or aggregations or turning a log into a metric. There's a lot of stuff that happens to logs after they're emitted from applications. And so my hot take is that developers, it is very important that you understand maybe not every single transformation that's happening to your logs after your app sends them out, but you do need to have some sense of what's going on in that logging pipeline because it's just processing that's invisible to you today. And the time that you need to either adjust or manage your log lines or manage your log levels, or when SRE asks you to do something with the logs, it's just good to be familiar with what's happening to that data. So that is my hot take. Go make a friend in SRE and ask what the heck happens to your logs.
Yeah. And, I'll add to my hot take and say, if you're not careful, you can turn your logs into a real problem. Think e-discovery, think compliance, think you're logging things. If you wouldn't put it on a postcard to your mother, don't put it in a log.
Ooh, I love that. I don't know that my mom would love a stack trace, but
Your mom could be super tech savvy. You don't know. We don't know.
My hot take on logs, if you're logging everything, you're not really observing. It's all just noise. And most importantly, it just blows up your budget.
+1 on producer soap today.
Yeah.
That's a quotable quote.
Thank you. Very cool. Well, Bill, I am very excited to get into our mailbag segment. So, this is a new segment on our episodes where we actually have an email, ollieunplugged@chronosphere.io. You can send in your questions on our episode topics.
Well, let's dig into this question. What do we have?
The question that we received was, let's see. You talked in your last episode about instrumenting OTel and not collecting everything. But how do I know what's actually valuable?
Good question.
Paige, this feels like it's got your name written on it.
Sure. How do you know what's valuable? There's not going to just be one magic number or one magic score, of course, but the factors you might want to look at are the volume of that data or that data stream in comparison to all of your telemetry. How much is this particular like trace or this particular metric or log pattern? What percentage of the bill or the telemetry usage is it taking up volume wise? And then is anybody using that data? So is somebody querying for that in a monitor? Is it in a dashboard chart? Is it something being ad hoc queried as developers are investigating? Basically, how much data do you have and who is using it and how much are they using it? Together, those two facets of information help you understand what is actually valuable and what is just noise.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And by the way, like props to your mom for sending in that question because that is really a great segue into today's final episode on OTel, which is okay. We've talked for 2 episodes now about OTel and how awesome it is and how you can enable developers to be a little less burdened by it when you put it in. But now it's time to talk about how do you measure your success. When you're thinking about it, we've talked a lot about strategy. I think you also have to think about what was your hypothesis when you put OTel in, and why did you decide you wanted to standardize on it? We talked about OTel can be a bit of a big lift initially, and we've talked about ways to lighten the load a bit for a development team. I think now we're getting to the point where hopefully they've put that in or they're getting past that. It's now about how do you measure it? And for me, it's all right. I bet now you probably have traces that are more complete that maybe you didn't have before. Maybe you've got some magic correlation between some metrics over here and some traces over here, because guess what? OTel does that nice little trace ID thing and links things together really nicely for you. Paige, what do you think?
This is the most I'll ever sound like a leader, like a business leader, is I think you have to start with why. Why were you looking to add tracing? Why were you looking to consolidate vendors and migrate? Or why were you looking to move to OTel from proprietary instrumentation? I have heard reasons from the developers hate XYZ platform and it's just not working for them. You want to future proof, and we know OTel is the smart investment to make today. You should not use other people's reasons. Find out the reasons for your developers, for your org, and make sure that you're measuring those things. It's very easy to get caught up in saying this is the percentage of services instrumented with OTel and kind of hinge on that coverage as your main metric, but really, who's using this data? How are they benefiting?
First of all, I think that you did sound like a leader, and so we'll make sure your leaders know that you're well on your way. I think there's an interesting thing around, metrics on your metrics. Like, you put this idea of what's the deployment, being able to say, look, we have broader coverage, therefore better observability across the platform. But then the so what to that might be something along the lines of our MTTR is so much better when we have strong coverage for observability thanks to OTel implementation, because we've been able to deploy it more consistently and more standard ways, blah, blah, blah. And we're getting faster results because it just works better when the data is all more easily and nearly magically correlated. So I think looking at things like, what did my MTTR look like for this service before I instrumented with OTel? What did it
Yeah.
look like after? Right? Because maybe you have a more complete picture, or maybe you didn't instrument the service before because you were not sure what to collect. And, we did talk in, I think, episode 2 a little bit about collecting maybe based on a high level SLO that then got you SLIs and then got you metrics and traces that you should really target. But I think if you look at MTTR before and after, and I like Paige, your example of looking at coverage before and after, and then seeing how all of that ties together into ultimately better performance, better reliability, better customer experience, whatever metric you're seeing improve. And how does that again tie back to your Ollie strategy that says, I put observability in because I wanted to improve performance, because for every half a millisecond of performance, I get a revenue bump of X.
The resilience nerd in me does have to say MTTR is a very widely accepted and put into use metric at lots of organizations today. There has been a lot of research in the last few years about how it can be a very misleading metric. Just the basic idea is that we don't have incidents that are steady. You can have a really bad incident that takes a long time, or a super bad incident that's a short amount of time. And taking the mean of those, sometimes it doesn't tell us what we think it does. However, when I looked at some recent incident reports, I've been seeing mean time to restore service. And then part of me goes, are we just swapping one term for another?
Yeah.
But really, the important thing is, in addition to any MTTR metrics you're looking at, talking to those on-call developers, talking to those incident responders, bringing in that qualitative experience data right alongside your actual numbers. So I always have to plug for, let's look at our metrics.
That's a super valid point. And if you're an organization that isn't suffering from reliability or resilience problems, your MTTR may not be something that has a lot of focus, or might not be in your sights. But what if you looked at performance? I mean, there's all sorts of things. You could look at response
Yes.
time, and how is my response time better because I have better insights? Yeah, you might have to pull back a little bit out of the weeds and think about how you could measure this. But you start back with, I put observability in for this reason, to underpin these business objectives. I put OTel in to get there faster, to help give me better insights. So at the end, are you able to reach those objectives for your observability platform, whatever they were when you started out? We talked a lot about adoption and metrics. Paige, you want to talk a little bit more about that? Maybe start with what we mean by adoption. For me, that means that a development team has embraced that we're using OTel and they are regularly instrumenting, and it becomes sort of a second natured thing. They just do it. Of course they do it, right? That's where you get great adoption and where you get what I often talk about as a culture of observability. But maybe from your perspective, how do you think people should think about measuring adoption, and what's the importance of that maybe?
For me, I think everybody has a personal definition of observability in this space. And my slight one is that you do not get the full value of observability until you have humans looking at, interpreting, and analyzing all of this data you spent so much time collecting and shaping to be meaningful. That you could do steps 1 to create great OTel data. You could do steps 2 to make sure it's really shaped in the right way. But look at or act on that data, you're not getting the full value from it. So when I think about adoption and measuring it, of course, there's giving a training, having great documentation available. It is what we want at the end of the day is to see a behavior change. If you're rolling out tracing, it is great if you got 80% of developers to come to a tracing 101 workshop. The real metric of success, though, is how many developers after that workshop go in, try out tracing for the first time. And then the even better, like A plus gold star students are going to be the ones that integrate tracing into their
Mhm.
everyday workflows. They turn to tracing as another data point just as much as they would turn to logs. So I think that's where teams could spend a little more time, is understanding how can I track that if somebody's actually learned this information and is going to put this info to use. And some ways that you can do that that are not as nice as a quick API call are, of course, looking at your instant messaging platform. Are you seeing people sending more traces? Are you
Mhm.
seeing people ask questions in your wiki or documentation? Are people searching, oh gosh, the team told me I have to turn on tracing instrumentation? Are they looking for how to do that? Are they finding that information? So really going beyond just the MAUs and the DAOs and what you can get from your vendors. Look at all of the sources and places people look for information and ask and share it, and make sure you're seeing evidence that
Yeah.
people are making the changes that you expect. There's one sort of tactical one, which I've seen both OTel Weaver take a stab at custom schemas internally for companies to make sure if we want team name, it's team lowercase, and that's going to
Yeah.
be the same no matter what department you're in. There's a new effort called instrumentation score, specifically aimed at particular services and grading them based on not only a common set of like best practices for instrumentation, but you also can write your own custom policies as well. So I'm really excited to see that we're finally getting to this place in OTel where we can talk about
Mhm.
measuring the quality. We've gotten to the point where you can create a crap ton of OTel data. That's great. Now let's make sure that it's the maximally like most helpful for you and your org.
I love all those. When you talk about enforcement, and that's one of the
Yeah.
first things you talk about, then maybe you got to look back at the enablement, and did you make it easy? Did you help them understand? One of my favorite things is to watch somebody have the epiphany when they first see traces. They're in an issue and they see, oh my God, there's the problem. And they see it in a trace. They know where it is. And what's even better is if it's somebody that has no idea how the code works, even better if they're not a developer, right? I think that brings to me another great way to measure the success of your Ollie investment and the power of OTel is that if you have all that together and you're suddenly being able to use traces more effectively and get more tracing, then that hero culture that has maybe existed in your organization because that one or two people always have to come in and save the day, and maybe they loved that before, but I'm going to guess they're getting pretty burned out. Maybe somebody else can do this. Maybe somebody that's only been there a couple of weeks can do it because you've made them an expert in observability, right? And so you can focus your developer on the more important fires and the more important things, and do all that because you started with observability that supported what you needed to do with your business. You enabled that and made it better with OTel for more consistency and getting along better tracing and metrics. And now you've got this end result of eliminating the need for somebody who has been here for 40 years that knows everything about your company to be on every call.
Today, everyone needs to be invited to the observability party. We cannot cannot just keep it the purview of expert devs. You're going to need everyone to be able to understand the system to some extent, you know?
It's always interesting to me who some of the biggest, when I've been on incident calls over the year, and I've been on a couple, some of the biggest users of observability over the years have been non-developers in my experience. And the ultimate win is when you've got technical leaders on a call using it. It's always interesting to see when that happens. And that's, as I talked about, a culture of observability. That's what I'm talking about. Like the minute people hop on a call, the first thing they're pulling up is observability, right? I mean, I am not a subscriber of this idea of a one pane of glass. I think there are purpose-built tools for all sorts of technologies, but observability I always look at as the front door to your environment. You're having a problem. It looks like it's over here. Maybe it's a database issue. Maybe it's some other technology. And there's probably purpose-built technology to manage and dig into that particular component. But observability gets you there with context to show you why it happened, how it happened, when it happened, how often it's happening, what's the impact of the user, all of that. So I think it's really great when you get a company there. That's where you really can measure strong success because you probably have all the things we talked about: great adoption, better MTTR, better performance on your code, maybe even things like shorter release cycles, all sorts of things.
Faster feedback loops. That's, I mean, like the engine of Dora is all about like how quickly can we get code out there and learn from how it behaves and then iterate.
One of the next points I want to really talk about is, observability and cost are two very tightly wound topics. If you're in a situation where your CFO knows what observability is because of the cost rather than the value it brings, then that can create a significant problem for everybody that's trying to make observability work. And one of the side effects of that I have seen happen is that you pull back observability a little bit. You start to edit what you're going to observe. You start to be a little more cautious about it. And I think it goes back to, the power of OTel and standardizing on a single type of telemetry across your metrics and traces and logging formats helps to address a lot of that. But then taking that methodical approach about what you're instrumenting. And I said, having intent when you gather logs or metrics or when you're collecting traces, that intent is really important. Paige, what have you seen with people when they start editing what they're going to observe and all of that, and what are your thoughts?
I've seen a really unsettling trend as we've gotten further into this cloud native world. Loving that. If you're not watching the video, we are upping our video game. I'm gonna need you to see the banners on screen. Just plug, we're on YouTube. Cliffhanger, what is this unsettling trend? Well, when you are looking at ability purely in terms of financial cost, not of impact, not of value, but how much is this costing me? And I don't like that this cost is going up and up and up. You create a culture where developers are afraid to instrument. They are fearful. They'll not add data they need to do their jobs to get the visibility into the products and workflows and experience for the users. And I think that is a way bigger problem than having a high bill, because at this point, there are tools and there's features and there's heuristics that help you manage this overwhelming flood of telemetry. So do you want a culture of fearless instrumentation that can be managed and developers add what they need to see to get that visibility? Or do you want a culture of people who are penny pinching, not thinking about value, but afraid of the cost and not wanting to talk with the CFO about this expensive observability thing? I think organizations, if I've taken all the HR surveys in my life, they say, do you have the information and tooling you need to effectively do your job? And if you say no to that because you're afraid to add a metric, or you're afraid to add a new log, or God forbid, turn on tracing in your system, I think that's a big problem that warrants a conversation at the very least.
That ties really nicely into what we were talking about in the last episode about scoping your metrics. And again, I said it earlier, like starting with an SLO idea. I see so many people wait until the last minute to build an SLO rather than start there and that be the purpose for your instrumentation. But getting people to think about a reasonable scope and getting them out of that, I just got to collect everything and throw it all in and cross my fingers. That's how you get to those high costs. And that's how you get to the CFO knowing what observability is for the wrong reason. I think it would be really interesting to talk to companies that are, and I do talk to companies that are having this problem. And more often than not, it's because they lack a strategy. Maybe it's not a totally lacking strategy, but maybe they haven't thought about, how do I scope my metrics? What's the methodology for that? And that also goes back to what we were talking about in the last episode about better enablement for developers. Give them a template, give them a framework, give them a sense that says, why does this app exist? What are the 5 most important features? And what does good look like? And start from there. And suddenly, within a few minutes, you probably got some pretty good SLIs that aren't like magic, but they'll give you, if you started with the Google Golden Signals, you would probably find yourself having a lot better reliability and performance pretty quickly and then build on that, right? Instead of collect every metric possible about every component and then go ask for more money for your observability bill.
And I think that missing piece, the thing that OTel can't do for you, the thing that your vendor can't do for you, they could if you want to pay them a lot of money for services, perhaps, is having an understanding, having those conversations inside your company about what I think the breaking up your services into 3 tiers effectively. Like, what is the most important? What is like medium important? And what's the stuff that goes on in the background that like maybe doesn't even need an SLO around it? You need to have some sense of priority across your features, workflows, and services. And once you have a good idea about that, the strategy, the implementation, the measuring, a lot flows after you in your org figure out like high, medium, and low priority across your technical infrastructure.
I'm dating myself a bit, but it's very similar to the idea of disaster recovery that was much more prevalent before, world of cloud was out there, where you had physical data centers and multiple locations that were replicated between them. And there was a big cost to that. But you didn't, because it was such a big cost, you didn't replicate everything, right? And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, you had to make choices.
right, right. And I think the same if you are struggling with your initial investment or your initial sell of the value of observability, do take the things that are the noisiest, the most critical to your business, or some combination of the two. You don't have to do everything right away.
Yeah.
Do the ones that are going to give you the biggest impact in either reliability or customer experience or all of those things, right? Maybe it's something that your customers will never see, like speed up your development cycle because you can do less testing because you've got a great Ollie safety net. So when you deploy, and it blows up, real quick and it can be rolled back automatically if you're really savvy and go from there. Managing cost and treating it so it's not the villain and learning from what's driving the cost and maybe it's me, maybe I caused the cost to go up kind of a thing.
Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
I have to know then, cost is not the villain. What are cases when the observability bill increasing is actually a good thing?
To me, it is a fantastic question. I think your observability bill is going to go up as you scale, right?
Your footprint in the cloud does
Yeah.
tie to creating more data.
I think cost has to make sense and align with the size of your cloud spend. And that cost is relative.
Of course.
It's sort of like the time is valuable kind of thing. We were talking about DoorDash before we recorded, right? DoorDash. The cost to DoorDash might be X versus me going and getting it. But the value I get because I can sit here and record the next podcast episode while somebody runs and gets my lunch is huge to me. And so I
Huge.
think it's the same with observability. If you're getting huge value out of it, maybe your observability costs are a large part of your technology spend, but you're also innovating fast. You've got great customer experience. Your revenues are being driven by, solid performance of your things, or there's great employee productivity or whatever the things. If you're getting the success and measured value out of your digital assets because observability exists, then maybe the cost is valuable. High cost isn't always bad.
Yeah, plus 1 mil. Sometimes in our world, a lot in social media, things get flattened. And so it's like, I love cost is not a villain. It's not. If you're getting great value, you would pay a great cost for that as an organization. So the problem is if you don't have the ability to tune or shape, or you're just in a little bit of a pickle and your tooling isn't helping you figure out what's valuable, what's not in a sustainable way. Oof,
Yeah,
there is a better way though. And I hope we've given you a few ideas for how to measure and prove the value, at least as it relates to OTel.
I'm feeling kind of emotional that we're wrapping up this three-part series. So, to close the chapter here, I would love to hear your one-liners on OpenTelemetry and a takeaway for our audience. What would it be?
it is a big lift, but through proper planning, proper enablement, and just being thoughtful about how you deploy, it doesn't have to be the giant, massive undertaking that it might look like in the beginning.
Love it. What about you, Paige?
I think mine will be spend cardinality where it counts. It's just totally a ripoff of cost isn't the villain, waste is, but it's a little more specific to the pain people feel with metrics. Cardinality is not good or bad. It's a trait of a data set. It is not good or bad. Depends on how much value you get from that data. So I encourage folks to really look at where they're spending their cardinality and is it the places that they really want to be.
Are you spending $300 on food delivery and are you happy or are you not?
See, that's what matters, and that's my favorite takeaway. Cost is not the villain, and I'm gonna use that line to my boyfriend when he looks at my Amazon order history. If you're happy, then it's worth it.
It's true. You've got value out of that. Among the many services we're providing here at Ali Unplugged, it is enablement of all the wrong sort of ways. This is a safe space. It's like Vegas, except not. So, well, listen, on that note, I think we have reached the end of this first three-part series. And, Paige, I want to thank you for being guest star extraordinaire to help us open up Ali Unplugged. I'm sure there are many other topics that we might call on you for to join us once again. Any parting words? I feel like we should give you like a sash or...
What I want to say is OTel, it ain't that hard. If the last time you looked at OTel was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, even 6 months ago, I encourage you to regularly check in because it is moving quite fast in a lot of different areas. And the conceptions you may have about OTel may not hold true anymore. Things are moving fast. There's lots of innovation. And I encourage you to regularly check in on what OTel can do for you.
I loved this three-part series. This may be one of my favorite episodes. I've learned so much talking to you both. And Bill, I'm going to see you next month. So
Can't get rid of me.
thank you everyone for listening. And we drop on the first Tuesday of every month. So stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Chronosphere. Chronosphere is the observability platform built for control in the modern containerized world. Recognized as a leader by major analyst firms, Chronosphere empowers customers to focus on the data and insights that matter to reduce data complexity, optimize costs, and remediate issues faster.